hello, and welcome back, listeners and friends of The Roll Report. My name is Colin. I am your debatably friendly local DM and host. I use they and he pronouns, and this is another episode of Classin' Up the Joint. I am rejoined. That's the English word, rejoined by our wonderful, fantastic friend of the show, Sebastian Yu. Sebastian is a game designer, a writer, an editor, the community manager, and publishing coordinator for Hit Point Press, and has written so many incredible things, including work on the Cosmere RPG and work on the Field Guide to Floral Dragons. And I'm trying to remember the other thing that we mentioned specifically, and I'm not, the Tangled Blessings expansion coming up. We are working together on Weird Little Guys for Brieger Collective Creative, which is going to be very fun. Sebastian, I could go on all day, but I'm going to stop there. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Yeah, thank you for having me back. This is great.
I'm getting better at like doing the intro and getting launched. So today, like I said, I want to let you drive a little bit. I'm going to say to our friends and listeners out there, we are going to talk about wizards and spellcasting and the 2024 updates to both of these things. But yeah, I want to turn it over to you. Do we want to start at the wizards specifically, or start at the spellcasting in general?
I think it would make it easier to discuss spellcasting before we discuss wizards, because some of the wizard features interact with the new spellcasting rules in interesting ways. Yeah. And I think that would help in terms of clarity and flow of information. I mean, I guess before we get started, I do kind of want to preface this by saying that, my analysis and my opinions come from what's currently available and what my interpretation of the rules is. Like, I have read these rules, but I haven't found it possible to play with them yet because, in my opinion, it can't really be done without the monster manual for balance. And the 2024 characters are a lot more powerful, and I think there have been structural changes to monsters as well, but I'm not sure what exactly those are, so I've been waiting for that. And I think, maybe my thoughts on the rules might change a bit once I get a feel for what it's like in play and how it interacts with the rest of the game mechanics. And I do think it's an amazing undertaking to update the rules like this and to consider feedback and playtesting and 10 years of having played the game. I think it's really cool, so...
Yeah, I agree. I think that is a very important disclaimer, and I'm curious to see. And I will say, druids and rangers would like to have a word about how overpowered they are in the new rules. But having said that, I agree. I'm going to keep saying I think in this monumental undertaking they are doing so far. I am seeing a consistently excellent job with just clarity of information and the way it is being presented. So I'm inclined to think that, like, hopefully things will continue in that vein. And even if we have quibbles with the details, at least the information is going to be presented in a easier to parse format. That's my hope.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah. Let's talk about spellcasting in the new rules.
Yeah, so something that immediately jumped out at me was that the 2014 rules had restrictions regarding bonus actions and spells, and you could only cast a spell with a spell slot as a bonus action if you cast only a cantrip that turn, except they didn't refer to it as a spell slot, they called it a leveled spell. But also on the same turn, you as the caster could still cast counterspell if you'd cast a fireball the same turn and an enemy mage wanted to counterspell that fireball, and then you could counterspell their counterspell. Yeah. And for 2024, the verbiage has changed, and now the rules specify one spell with a spell slot, which means you actually can't counterspell a counterspell or use silvery barb to make your spell land. And I think that's really interesting. I think it, on one hand, it does provide some clarity as to what I assumed the 2014 rules were getting at, like the intent behind it. But on the other hand, I really like counterspelling someone else's counterspell, and I like having a friendly mage in my party to counterspell anything that they throw back. Like, I do think it's funny. Yeah. Like, it's just funny to play with. The counterspell chain.
The counterspell battle is like such a fun and ridiculous moment to have when you have high-level casters like that.
I think so, yeah. And so like that was something that did jump out at me. And it's interesting though, because with the removal of the leveled spell and the replacement of it as a spell slot, that kind of opens you up to, you might be able to cast a spell that would have a level, but if it doesn't expend a spell slot, then maybe you could cast it with a spell scroll, for example, and then still be able to cast like a bonus action spell on the same turn. So even though technically both of those are spells that aren't cantrips. And so that's, I'm not sure if that's intentional or not. And I would really like to, I would like to hear from the designers as to whether or not that was intentional. But it's interesting, especially with some of the spells being moved around and their casting times changed.
Yeah.
I really like that Lesser Restoration now as a bonus action. That is super useful. So I would be able to cast a spell from a spell scroll and also do that on the same turn.
I feel like
not as a wizard,
I feel
of
like in the
course,
redesign. No, totally. I feel like it's funny to me because I kind of am seeing these areas where it looks like they really listened to a lot of feedback and a lot of how people were playing the game, and how many questions Jeremy Crawford was getting on Twitter about the rules, like the "can I counterspell and in the process of casting a thing" question. I've searched it once and was like, 75 people asked the same question, which to me speaks to like, they saw an inconsistency or a misunderstanding of the rules, and they tried to clarify those things specifically. And then at the same time, like I could talk, Metalos and I had a long talk about Rangers and how they've managed to somehow, we think, kind of become even worse. But having said that, not the focus
I've never
for
played
today.
one, so I wouldn't be able to say. I am an arcane caster main all the way, so no idea.
I love that. Yeah. I want to say I miss. I don't know. I've gotten in arguments about the counterspells battles as well, like to keep on that specific focus for a moment. And I think clarifying it is a really smart idea, even if then, you have people going like, well, rules is written, I'm not having any fun, which I think then you need to have better and more fun. And still, as DM, if you're like, I don't like that, you can do whatever you want,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think like particularly with regard to the counterspell rule, that one was actually addressed in a Sage Advice column, whereby Jeremy Crawford did publish in that document his official, yes, you can counterspell a counterspell.
Yeah. Yeah. But I appreciate how much clarity they've tried to bring to some of those slightly fuzzy rules.
Yeah, same. But I think in terms of the wizard class itself, that one, like, it has not changed too much in terms of class features. And I think the changes that they did make for 2024 are good for the class, actually. So it's small things. Like, I like that the number of prepared spells is now a fixed number instead of being tied to your wizard level and your intelligence, because that was just more mathematics that I would have to do. And I've seen that they're trying to minimize cognitive load, as we were saying with the restructuring of information. And so they've just taken this and made it more streamlined. So it just is a fixed number of prepared spells, and I don't need to think too much beyond that.
Yeah.
I also like that they took the cantrip formulas from Tasha's and made those a core feature now. So, and also spellbooks as a focus. Like, I was telling one of my friends about that, and they were like, wait, you couldn't do that already? And I'm like, no, actually you couldn't. And it's really bizarre. So there's just some things here that feel very natural for the game that have been added and kind of codified in that way. It's nice.
Yeah, totally. Tell me more about what they've changed with the cantrips. I'm like looking at it, I'm trying to find where this language is and specifically.
Oh, because there's an optional feature in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. I think you get it at level, I want to say, I don't remember what level you'd get it at 5, I want to say. But now they've kind of codified that, and you can change your cantrips at the end of every long rest. And so cool. That was a feature that originally appeared in Tasha's, and now they've added it to the core if you're looking it up and you're seeing it now.
Oh, that's I love that. That's great. Yes, whenever you finish a long rest, you can replace. Oh, yeah. No, I love that. I love that so much. Like,
yeah, I like that.
So in the 2014 rules, you're locked in so much more. Things are so much more about, well, you can change it when you level up, which is going to be at this undefined period in the future. But now, not only with your prepared spells being able to change, and I will mention the thing that I thought was really cool, that now at the end of a short rest, you can swap out one spell. Once you reach 5th level, your memorized spell feature is after a short rest, you can swap one leveled spell for a different one from your book. I love that.
Yes.
This ability to slightly customize your massive spell list to the scenario at hand, similar to how druids and clerics can, like where they can really just swap their whole kit any day to reflect what the challenges of the day are going to be.
Yeah, I like the flexibility, and honestly, I'd probably use this to like cast a buff and then swap it out after that, like once I don't need it and it's not concentration. So that would save me.
You wake up in the morning, cast your mage armor for the day, and then just hang out for an hour of breakfast, and you don't need mage armor anymore, and it's still up for the rest of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, I love this. This is so cool. Yeah.
And I also like that the way that ritual casting has been broken out. I like that the ritual tag also for spells has been moved to the casting time, because that's what's actually relevant about the ritual. Aside from the fact it doesn't use a spell slot, the relevance is that it adds 10 minutes to your casting time. And so I think that's where it should be. That's a good change.
Yeah. Totally.
And at second level, they've added like a scholar feature for the wizard, and so they get expertise in a skill that's on their skill list already. Except they don't get the option of insight. But I really like that, because it gives you a lot of control over what you as a character get to be good at, and it does make the wizard feel scholarly, and it does make sense that the wizard just is an expert in this particular area, and I like that a lot.
It gives you. Yeah, it increases your flavor potential, which is something I feel like you and I talked about this a little bit, like how some classes are really well tailored to flavor the entire thing how you want. You can be the fighter who is also a chef and wields a rolling pin. Like you can really do that. And this gives the wizard another little bit of nice, like, who is this character? What are they really good at? What have they focused on? And I feel like I appreciate that. Well, I'm going to say this out loud, and I don't know if it's true. It is trying to make the social aspects, the D20 roles that are not about combat, more important and mean more for the wizard, as well as bards can do that all day, rogues can do that all day. But to give a wizard something that is like, oh no, you're going to be really good at this thing. And it's going to be important when we're not throwing fireballs around.
Yes. Yeah, so my first character was a bard, and I really liked that bards got expertise once they leveled up a bit. And then I went from playing a bard to a wizard, and I missed that bonus, and so I'm really happy that they've introduced it for this one.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool.
4,
8, 12. And now, so I was trying to figure this out. I wanted to say something about either spell mastery or signature spells as you get to high levels has changed, but I might have made that up.
Sorry.
And now I'm not sure. I was trying to figure out if anything about either signature spells at level 20 or the spell mastery at level 18 had changed.
Yes, they have. Yes.
Okay. What am I missing? Because it almost looked the same.
Yeah, so spell mastery, they've changed the casting time for the spells that are eligible for this feature. So previously you could have had a reaction spell like shield as an option.
Right.
But the 2024 rules, they stipulate that it has to have a casting time of 1 action. But, and then as I said, this one again does have an interesting interaction with the one spell slot per turn rule, because this feature explicitly doesn't use a spell slot. And so I could use my spell mastery and then still use a leveled spell on my turn.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's so interesting.
So, I mean, I could get off a shatter using this, and then I could do a misty step to get out of the way or something. Yeah. And so I think that I like that.
I think
and I like the
change
really to how often you can change the spell that you have for spell mastery, because it's now once per long rest, and you don't It's easier to remember, and it doesn't force the wizard to be like, well, I have to study for 8 hours.
Yes.
So what am I doing? When am I doing that?
I have to do this thing all the time. I'm a little sad specifying the casting time of an action. Like specifically, my Blade Singer wizard from an old campaign is going to be annoyed that they can't just cast shield without spending slots whenever they want to all the time now. And I don't know how many other wizard spells off the top of my head like would have reaction or action or bonus action as casting times that would otherwise fit into spell mastery. But shield was one that was like really, really nice, and especially for blade singers. But the trade-off of being able to swap it for at the end of a long rest is, I guess that's worth it. I want to say that's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So cool. I mean, and just, one of my favorite things about high level wizards is to be able to like, no, I just don't need spell slots with these things because I'm so good at them. And there's some really fun, interesting spells in first level spells to choose for that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, but the base class hasn't really changed too much, and I think that overall the changes that have been made are really good for it. So that's nice. It also does I also like that there have been kind of minimal changes to the class because like the whole point of playing a wizard is to cast spells. So that and they have made some interesting changes to the spells.
Yeah, I mean I'm gonna make a bit of a value judgment that like I agree. I think this is just a net improvement on the base 2014 class. It is still, going to have one of the biggest, strongest spell lists in the game. That is still your job, is to like stand in the back and throw spells at people. But your ability to do that has kind of been increased, and your abilities outside of combat have also been buffed in a way that I don't know. This all seems like really, really nice. I'm gonna call out again. I think like the having the level 19 thing be epic boons for every base class is a great idea. I love them. I think they're so much fun. I'm like excited to play a high level 2024 campaign just for that.
Yeah, no, the epic boon feats are really fun. So
yeah,
it also means that kind of every character gets a nice capstone. Like no matter what their class is. So I appreciate it kind of introduces them at that level, right? Like my sense is that they are among the features that are designed to kind of enable you to keep playing your campaign, do the level 20 to 30 arc if you wanted to, but you've introduced them before, so now like a DM and the players are like, this is what's going to happen for me if we keep playing and I, actually become capable of defeating gods at will. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So we have been talking about counterspell, and that is one of the spells that has undergone, in my view, one of the most drastic changes in 2024. I don't know if you've had the chance to look at it.
Well, I'm looking at it right now as we mentioned it, and my immediate reaction is annoyed, but I don't know if that's the appropriate reaction.
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily appropriate and inappropriate, but it is interesting because the changes are, so there's a whole bunch. So instead of you making a check with your spellcasting ability, the creature that you're targeting has to make a Constitution saving throw. And that feels very strange to me as a player because they have to resist my counterspell, but I feel like I'm less of an active participant in the struggle. And so I liked having to make a check with my spellcasting ability. And I also really liked the balance of the DC being 10 plus the spell's level because it made sense to me that a higher level spell is harder to counter. And in this version, counterspell doesn't seem to care about the level of the spell that I am trying to counterspell. And that is very bizarre to me also, because I also liked the benefit to being able to upcast counterspell in the 2014 rules.
And I mean, I think you hit it right when you're saying like that your character in the action of counting the caster spell is intimately involved in the 2014 version where you must make that check or you must decide whether or not to upcast it. And honestly, there I'm like, well, the success or failure of this depends on my role, like my spellcasting check, not, there are monsters that that you will find at a higher level where forcing them to make a con save is like forcing them to use one of their strongest abilities, and there's almost no way for them to fail. This isn't one where I'm also like, I want to ask the designers what they were thinking.
Yeah. And so from a certain point of view, I can understand where the con save is coming from, because you can say that, oh, maybe they're trying to maintain focus on this spell because the flavor text says, you're trying to interrupt them in the process of casting the spell. And so from like, if somebody is casting counterspell at me as a player, it makes sense if I think about it that way. But I really liked, again, I liked the ability of making the ability check, because if I am a wizard, for example, I like feeling like it's kind of like a battle of wits rather than an endurance thing. And so I liked being able to use my intelligence. And so if they wanted to do something that gave the opposing creature a bit of a chance to resist, I wouldn't be opposed to it being maybe an opposed check, opposed ability check. So my spellcasting ability versus theirs.
Yes.
Like that could work.
I agree. Well, and the other thing that I'm noticing, okay, to read the rules text, on a failed save, if your target fails the con save, the spell dissipates with no effect. Whatever action economy was used is wasted.
Yes.
However, the spell slot is not expended. That is the next step. If that spell was cast with a spell slot, the slot isn't expended. And I feel like that is also different. I want to say the 2014 version, if you know whether you succeed or fail, the spell slot has been used for both the counterspeller and the caster.
Yes.
Okay.
So
because, so they want to give the
like,
consolation prize of you failed the thing, so at least you didn't waste a spell slot, but I don't know.
Yeah, so that's been interesting because, like, regardless of whether or not my counterspell succeeds, I'm using the spell slot. That's fine. That is unchanged from 2014. I'm good with that. So, but an enemy mage could counterspell my spell successfully. I'd lose my action, but I'd still keep my spell slot. Like that's actually a very player favorable change, because some folks have pointed out that 2024 monsters are moving away from using spell slots as a resource, and they're moving to more limited use abilities. And so those abilities will get used up if they fail the save and I successfully counterspell them. So it will deplete their resource, but if they cast with a spell slot, I'm not sure because I haven't seen the monster manual, but that this one does seem to be a player favorable change. But at the same time, I'm also fine with losing my spell slot. I personally didn't have that as a complaint in 2014, so I mean, maybe some people did, and this is a problem that is being solved elsewhere.
I'm so curious. I think my only problem with counterspell was the arguments that would happen every time someone tried to counterspell a counterspell, or my favorite one, because this always, like, whenever this happened, and it happened with regularity, it took at least 10 minutes, was the like, I'm casting something, the monster tries to counterspell, and I counterspell its counterspell while I'm still casting this other thing, and just the amount of... Anyway, that was my complaint, was kind of the lack of clarity around some of these specific triggers and actions and when you could use them. Not the actual spellcasting ability check and what was happening.
I never really found that confusing, because to me it just is, because counterspell has that somatic component, so you would be able to see them trying to cast it. So you on your turn can still cast a counterspell if someone is casting a counterspell at you. It's just that if there are more party members and if there are more enemy mages that are also involved, then you kind of have to do, like, for lack of a better term, like you have to do the Magic the Gathering stack and then take everything in reverse order to see which spell actually goes through.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I liked that.
I like it too. I think the confusion and people's arguments, if I'm remembering, are just the like, it's the how you specifically parse like what mental faculties it takes to cast a spell. And you're like, if I am mid-verbal and somatic component for my fireball over in my left hand, can I still create what I need to with my other hand?
And flatly, yes, you can. That's not been confusing ever. Like,
I don't
know.
I don't disagree. I just thought it was funny and like a little weird that every time this situation happened, that it required a discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, it happened in like different games that I was playing, like different groups of people having the same conversation. But
yeah, and as we did say, apparently if 75 people are asking it and Jeremy Crawford saw fit to put it in the Sage Advice, then clearly. But that's been a kind of weird complaint that I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, no,
like,
totally.
But as it stands in 2024, you cannot do that. So
yeah, and
it doesn't really matter now.
Yeah, I agree with you. The change is I think net benefit to players. I am curious when Monster Manual comes out if they will. So my sense is that I want to say about a year ago or 2 years ago there was this big shift between in Monster Generation and how they treated spells, and it did go. It's already kind of made that shift to away from a lich doesn't have spell slots. They can cast these spells twice per day and these spells 3 times per day, and these it removes their ability to upcast things too in this interesting way.
And you can see that shift in Modern Canaan's Modern Canaan Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. A lot of them have moved to per limited use abilities or per day abilities, and that makes it easier for dungeon masters. To be honest, if I'm playing a caster, I kind of don't really want to have to remember to mark off what spell slots I've used, so I do like that. But yeah, like it will be interesting to see how this plays out in terms of like if your goal is to kind of grind the resource and do that. And also another thing is with it being a Constitution save now, Legendary Resistance, they can fail the con save and then just choose to succeed. And so on one hand, I see that it is kind of player favorable in that these limited use abilities are going to be depleted, but also at the same time, does it matter if they're going to have like the stack of legendary resistances that they can just use to negate that? And so again, it still becomes like a resource grind. So
it does. I mean, to that specific thing, it gives players one more way to try to force a creature to burn its legendary resistance.
It's true.
It's not all saving throws that are directly a response to a grapple or a spell effect or an AoE spell. It is, I can force that. If I can force that Lich, I can force Vecna to burn a legendary resistance if I manage to get a counterspell in at the right time and angle and they roll poorly, I'm coming around to it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm coming around a little bit more. I stand by my initial reaction of annoyance at taking away the caster's spellcasting check to make it work. But I see what you're saying, and I'm coming around a little bit more. I'm curious more than annoyed now to see what will happen.
I think overall, like on the balance of things, my preference is still for the 2014 version. And this one, it's just that the changes are really intriguing. And this is one of the cases where, I want to know more about like the impetus and the thought that went into this rework, and like what exactly the problems were that they wanted to solve with this. I think that context would be really valuable. But until I get to actually fight the 2024 monsters, we'll see how it behaves. I'm willing to give it a shot,
Yeah. Something we talk about not infrequently on the show in general is the trying to give everyone the benefit of the doubt that we are all in this community and as game designers and writers and the people behind them operating in good faith.
Yeah, absolutely.
As much as the whole world and the whole tabletop world likes to talk shit about Wizards and about Hasbro, still the people who are doing the writing, I want to believe and I want to give them the best benefit of the doubt that they have their heart in the right place and are trying to make good changes.
Of course they are. They're the creators of the game. So I would.
Hello, rollers! It is I, your host, debatably friendly DM, and other things, Colin, here to welcome you to the mid-roll. Thank you for listening, and we hope you are enjoying this episode so far. This is your periodic interruption, brief as it may be, to remind you that The Roll Report is on many social media platforms. You can find us around the interwebs at The Roll Report Cast, on Instagram, on TikTok, and on Blue Sky. We don't do the other thing. We don't talk about the artist formerly known as Twitter. But you can follow us there for news and announcements, special clips from the interviews you may not have seen, and learn about who we're going to interview next.
Because if you are very intrigued and curious about upcoming interview guests, if you head on over to patreon.com/therollreport and give us a single dollar, you can submit questions for our interviews, and only you and only our other supporters on Patreon will hear the answers. That's right, special Patreon-only Q&As with interview guests if you support us there and if you send us questions. Thank you so much for listening. Back to the show. Enjoy!
I'm so curious. I hope that we'll be able to snag one of them for the show and be able to be like, can you tell me about some of these decisions? I want to know about counterspell.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. If we find the answer, it will absolutely go out wide into the world.
I think another one that I want to talk about is Arcane Vigor. Did you see that? It's a new one. It's an entirely new spell that they've introduced for the 2024 rule set. It's a new spell. It's for sorcerers and wizards. It's really interesting. It gives them healing, which is not something they had access to aside from vampiric touch. So it's interesting because to me, it's a spell that feels like a class feature because it uses hit dice as a mechanic. And so it's not overpowered. You can roll those. You can regain hit points equal to the result plus your spellcasting modifier. And I like it. It's a bonus action. It gives them that little bit of a boost. I suppose if you really don't have a healer, then sure. Yeah. But it's just it's interesting because I like that we're using hit dice for something else other than regaining hit points during a short rest. But at the same time, using that does make it feel more like a feature than a spell. Like, what do you think?
It does. I mean, it feels like a thing that should be a second level feature for full casters, or I guess it is specifically sorcerers and wizards.
Yes, specifically for these arcane classes that didn't have access to healing, really.
And to just kind of take the text of this and make it a feature that you expend a spell slot as a bonus action, and then you can roll the hit point dice. I will say the thing that I love here, well, depending on how you build your character, that it uses your spellcasting ability modifier rather than your constitution modifier, which usually the short rest hit dice will do.
Yes.
And the likelihood depending on how you build your character, when I build a caster like that, I try to have a pretty high constitution, but almost definitely my spellcasting ability will be higher.
The spellcasting is the higher one, yeah. And it's interesting that you say that you could easily word it expend a spell slot and then regain some hit points, because actually a lot of the classes across the board there has been flexibility introduced for expending a spell slot and then regaining a class resource. So that's also kind of why I feel like this feels more like a feature. It is an interesting spell. So
it's a really interesting spell. And so I was just looking at it. It is yourself. It doesn't give wizards and sorcerers the ability to heal
it's for you.
Else.
It's a self-targeted thing. It's I need healing now kind of thing.
That really does kind of feel like a class feature more than a specific spell. But
you agree?
That's quibble.
Yeah. Okay.
I do. It feels like something that should be just a second level sorcerer and wizard ability. But I guess I understand. So thinking about it for a moment, as if I'm one of these designers, if you want to give multiple classes the same ability, then I guess you kind of do it as a spell. Because I think the way that things have been designed, it seems there's been a conscious effort to not have classes have the same feature, right? Like no other caster has the wizard's arcane recovery. No other caster has sorcerer's metamagic, and those are bigger, more important things. But I think I'm trying to put myself in the mind of the designers and go why is this a spell versus a feature for sorcerers and for wizards?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that it should necessarily be a class feature. I'm just saying that it feels like one.
Yeah. I might go ahead and say it kind of should. I don't like shoulding on people, but it kind of feels like it should. But it definitely the feeling of it and the flavor of it is much more of a feature than a specific spell on its own.
I do like the focus of using the hit dice, because I'm hoping that maybe there are going to be more monster effects that will play with player hit dice a little bit more, because I don't find that they get expended very often. I think this probably is one of those things that varies table to table, and it really depends on how much combat your game involves. But I haven't ever found myself short of hit dice, I don't think, in a session.
Same. I have not played more of kind of like hardcore dungeon crawl, like we're never going to get a long rest ever kind of thing. Or something, friend of mine told me about, what did they call it? I think they called it hardcore mode. The idea, and I've seen this elsewhere, that like the way they run their tables, a short rest is a night's sleep and a long rest is a full week of downtime. And it encourages more I kind of want to play that way, but I don't know that I want a full campaign because I'm not sure if I would get really annoyed. But I like that it encourages a very different resource management.
Yeah, I do. I like that. Oh, that's interesting. I think I as a player would really like that, actually. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It does feel
so
more
when they do that,
true.
Do they mean that like the spells that last then the spells that would last like 8 hours, those only last 8 hours, and you'd get it for like one day until you could just get a week of downtime?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
And so then like you'd have to spread your spell slots over until you could get or do you mean until you could get a week of downtime?
Yeah. You're anyone who recovers their spell slots or features that recover on a long rest has to shepherd those features much more carefully.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I also think that in a campaign like that, I would have much more use for magic items.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and cantrips become super important. And while we're talking about the wizard, like your arcane recovery actually becomes really.
It does. Yeah. And so that would be. And so the feature that lets you change out your cantrips per long rest, that's very good.
I want some of the things I'm like, as a DM, I would like to homebrew that. So something, if it makes sense that a night's sleep and you can change your cantrip, it's like, okay, then we're going to, the language of that for the purposes of our hardcore campaign will change to short rest.
No, I would be interested in playing with it. That's a hardcore campaign. That's so interesting. I haven't heard of that before. I would play that.
I've heard it's one friend of mine in the Bay Area who plays this way, and I think someone else that I had spoken to about it was like, oh yeah, I've heard of something like that. But yeah, I'm very curious, and to the extent that I'm like, do I need to just run a short campaign this way just to see what happens?
Yeah, I mean that would be kind of survivalist, like go through the wilderness campaign. I think you could also. Yeah, you could integrate it into some of the modules, I think. Like, it would lend itself really well to, like, Tomb of Annihilation, for instance. Like, that's a jungle trek. Like, yeah.
Yeah, totally. The Waterdeep Dragon Heist might be really interesting like that, actually. They're just thinking out loud. Anyway.
Yeah. But anyway, yes. Yeah. Another thing is that I noticed that, broadly speaking, a lot of spells got damage boosts, which is nice. And honestly, there are a lot to list. I could not list all of them, but a lot of them did. And I do think it speaks to like the general kind of the power curve that we're getting in 2024 of characters becoming vastly more powerful.
Yeah, extremely so in some cases. And well, I specifically of the ones I have looked at, I feel like Bards got like a really big boost.
Yeah, love that for them.
And they really tried to compensate for Paladins. I haven't done too big a dive in, and there's a part of me that like my visceral emotional reaction to Divine Smite now being a spell is annoyance. Because I like my smites as when I play Paladins, and at the same time, having seen a level 2 Paladin deliver 50 damage in one hit, I'm like, yeah, okay, I understand why these changes have been made, and they had to get their power levels back down a little bit. But yeah, I do think the whole trend has been like more damage, more numbers, more dice rolling, essentially.
Yeah, which honestly, I have no complaints there. I like rolling dice. Like sometimes sometimes I'll be in a scene and I'll be like, yeah, but I would like to roll some dice. Like, can I make a perception check about this? And the DM's like, you can just notice it. And I'm like, yeah, but I want to roll some dice. Can you just please? Yeah.
Yeah. I like that there's a couple. I'm kind of going through the spell list. There's new things. There's just new things. I'm sure other things have changed, but we love
I
new
just
spells.
I took a read through the wizard spell list, and this is just kind of stuff that jumped out at me that I noticed.
Yeah.
Color spray and sleep, they no longer care about hit points, which means that they are now viable for much later in the game, which is so
that's
good.
so nice.
Yeah, that's very exciting to me.
Oh, I love that. Because sleep becomes useless like really fast when you're rolling dice.
Yeah,
and,
honestly, when I am squishy and I'm level 1, it's great. It is so good. Sleep is a staple, but it rapidly it just your level outpaces it, and but now it's no longer tied to the hit points of monsters. It means that there's less math that I have to do at the table.
It's so
and
useful.
also that again depends on the play style. Some DMs won't tell you how many hit points the creature has, and some of them will give you a narrative thing, being like, oh, they look kind of beaten up. So just depending on how you play the game, that spell may or may not have been useful to you in the first place. But I do like that it no longer cares about hit points. That
I love
opens it up a lot.
It is just to say it out loud, the change is now every creature of your choice in a 5-foot radius sphere makes a wisdom saving throw or immediately gets incapacitated condition until the end of its next turn. And then at the end of its next turn, if it has failed, it repeats the save. If it fails a second time, it is unconscious for the duration of, it looks like the caster concentrating on the spell for 1 minute.
Yeah, and I think this is an improvement. I really like that.
Agreed. I guess I was going to say I like that there's the balance of it now is it only lasts for your minute of concentration, but it can definitely affect more creatures and be much more effective late in the game.
Yes.
But hey, a 1 minute catnap can do a lot of good.
That's true.
Deployed effectively. And color spray. Yeah. Okay. Similarly, it is no longer about hit points and your opponents. It is just every creature in a 15-foot cone originating from you makes a con save or is blind until the next end of your next turn. It's so much simpler.
Yes. No, I think this is very streamlined, and it's good. It also feels like it does what it's supposed to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think both of those do more like, oh, the spell says make people go to sleep, so I make people go to sleep,
Yes.
Those are both great. Those spells are actually ones that I would consider using now instead of just going why does anyone waste time on this?
Yeah. And so, mechanically speaking, those were kinds of the two things that I noticed aside from the changes to the spells, the new spell and the damage boost. It's that stuff. And then I also noticed that there were some interesting narrative things that that happened. So legend lore is really funny now. If you go and read that, yes, specifically, you have to cast it on the subject has to be famous, and so if it's not if the subject isn't famous, there is now you get a sad trombone that plays, and honestly, I am so excited to play a bard now with this because I would like to do this on someone who I know is not famous in order to roast them. I mean, it costs 500 gold or whatever, but
it's
humiliating them is priceless.
Yes.
So I would love that.
That's great. I mean, it's such an odd, interesting niche spell, but I love
it's
that
funny now. So I like that it no longer has to be legendary importance. It just has to be famous. And so it means you can go to a tiny town, and if there is a suspicion that is prevalent in that town, you can do a legend lore about it. And I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so much fun.
Yeah. I also really like that they've added a specific mention to sign language in the spell Tongues, because that is the one that's a communication spell.
Have they? Oh, that's so
They have.
nice.
It's really good. And also it makes sense in terms of the game's history as well, because Drow sign language has been a thing since very early editions. And you mentioned Waterdeep Dragon Heist. There are checks that you can make as a Drow character to recognize that the characters in disguise are signing in Drow sign language, and so I really like that.
Yeah,
and so it also gives
so
a non-Drow character in that specific situation another opportunity. I don't remember how high level you are in that situation, but it's there. Yeah. Oh,
I just so like another thing that might be saying this every episode from now till whenever next year. Like, I appreciate that there is just acknowledgement that you might have a deaf character, that a signed language might exist in the game. You know, like this to me speaks well of, if nothing else, for the revised 2024 rules, that they are trying to have good representation within their.
And I know a
their
couple of people
descriptions.
who did consulting for this book and for the player's handbook, and I'm like, you know, they did a wonderful job, and it seems like one of these the sign language change is just a way to make it more inclusive, and that's really nice. It's a very simple thing for them to do, but it's very meaningful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, there are simple low lift things that a lot of people, a lot of recognized IP could do, and yet do not. And so I think it does speak highly that they wanted to make these changes and found people to like read the book and do sensitivity consults and not just like assume, we're wizards, it's fine, it doesn't matter. Like, we are Hasbro, we can do the thing, and we can weather any sort of backlash. Yeah, I love that is now part of it. That just really makes me happy.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, and I think in that kind of vein, they have a spell, like there is now a spell called Befuddlement, and that one is the renamed version of Feeble Mind. So if you wanted to take a look at that, so that one, it says that you know, it has to make an intelligence save. I like that they preserved that aspect of it, or the target can't cast spells or the magic action. So it's interesting that it's specifically targeting magic users now, as opposed to reducing your intelligence and charisma scores and, you know, completely like wiping your personality and intellect like that. Yeah. So like they've still managed to use this and to make it very like punishing. Yeah.
But it's a little bit less turn someone into, you know, a regressed toddler state.
Yeah, very much. And so befuddlement has a much different connotation than feeble mind, obviously. And so I like that it's more of a confusion feel, and it's I'm interfering with your magic feel than I am going to completely like do this to you.
It's very specific. I like that a lot. Yeah, good change. Good. Fundamentally, the spell is like different, but it's in a really good way. Like, I think that's one of those spells that I've almost never seen anyone use. Partly, I think, because everyone's like, this is like really uncomfortable and weird, like the effects of it, you know? Yeah,
it's also a very high level spell, and so I actually haven't been in many campaigns that have given me access to it. But no, I like this rework a lot. So
yeah, no, that it makes a lot more sense. And man, well, geez, I feel like, just on balance of things, like, to make a value judgment, the rules for spellcasting and the rules for wizards seem to have taken a leap forward, definitely in terms of clarity and kind of in terms of their quality as well.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've had someone on to talk about the clerics. I did, as I was reading through this, look at some cleric stuff, but I don't think I'm the right person for that. But because like,
we have not yet. But tell me what you found.
Okay, there have been some changes to that as well. I think probably most. I don't want to say divisively, but again, like, I mean, I'm just going to, like, spiritual weapon. So it now requires concentration. It also adds a damage die per spell level instead of 1 die per 2 spell levels. Okay. So it's now, like, and I think that again is a very interesting change. This isn't a class that I play very, like, I don't think I've ever played. Actually, I have, but I haven't. It's a bit of a strange situation. Essentially, I'm playing a sorcerer who is a divine soul sorcerer who is pretending to be a cleric. And so if asked, she just says that she's an arcana cleric. And so I have access to the cleric spell list, and she does have spiritual weapon. But as it interacts with the cleric class, I can't really say. But now, like, it's interesting that it now requires concentration, and I think that is going to be a problem because a lot of the cleric spells do require concentration as well. And whereas I think the appeal of spiritual weapon was, it didn't do that much damage, but you could just have it as a bonus action and just keep spamming it.
Yeah, and you can still upcast it, and then it gives you it gave you a useful bonus action every turn.
It did, yes.
And even casting it
Also,
casting it was a bonus action.
Yeah,
so you
casting it was a
could
bonus action,
cast
so,
it
like, it
and
was-
pop off a cantrip.
Yeah, it was useful.
And then
And so I like that
Yeah.
they've kind of scaled the power for it, but just the fact that it requires concentration, I think might be difficult now to do this. I think that maybe you'll get more mileage out of it at lower levels. But
I think I think that will be something that people will be or are a little bit annoyed about. And I understand it from the perspective that, like, for both druids and clerics, I think part of the appeal is your massive spell list, and part of the balance is how many of them are concentration. And having said that, I also wonder, like, as I'm looking at this, similar to druids, which we've talked about, there's kind of the divine order. You can kind of, as a cleric, starting from the beginning, you have these two paths of, like, do I want to be a spellcaster in the back, or do I want to get training with heavy armor and go be frontline tank? Where's I kind of going with that? I guess where I'm going is that I appreciate that there are these paths, and that, like, one path might be much more inclined to use spiritual weapon. But on the balance of things, my own bias would be to have just kept the 2014 version, because it did give you damage dealing ability without concentration, and, like, really let you, as a cleric in a, like, longer combat, you can get more things and more buffs up and running when that one bit to do a little bit of damage, just do a couple d8s every turn.
I think so. But like, basically my point is that it really does depend on the individual spell, and you should get someone on here to actually talk about clerics.
Yes, very much. It's on the list. It'll happen. Stay tuned. I don't know. But wow.
There's just, I've just found it really interesting, and I have really enjoyed like reading through these spells to see what has changed and to see. And I think, again, we were mentioning the intelligence piece, and so several of these now no longer specify that you need a minimum intelligence score. It's it's not necessarily impactful in that most creatures that you encounter do have like intelligence scores of 2 or higher, but but I like that you don't have to do that necessarily.
Yeah. I like that. I feel like there were some spells that it kind of made sense. I want to say specifically some, like, I think there's some things like from illusion schools where you're like, well, if this creature does not literally have the imaginative capability to, like, or like maze might have been one of them. I don't actually remember, but, like, if this creature cannot imagine itself in a different situation than it currently is in, it did kind of make sense to me why that spell would fail. I think I'm not complaining at all about that no longer being a thing. I guess just saying out loud that, like, sometimes I understood why that was a thing, or I conceptually wrapped my head around, like, why that was a specific mention. Yeah.
What else did I like? Oh, I also really liked the cloud of daggers, that you can move it now. It's really good. Yes, and so I actually did see an interview with Jeremy Crawford about that one, and he said that actually he was playing Baldur's Gate and he found it frustrating that he couldn't move his cloud of daggers, and so he was like, "Well, yeah, we should move it." And I thought that was really that was really cool, because that one, because Baldur's Gate did take some liberties with the ways that the spells work, but for this one, it stuck with it, and you can't move. You can't move Cloud of Daggers. And I was just like, oh, that's interesting, because he's been interacting with the rules in a different way. I actually don't know how often he gets to play, or how often he would have the opportunity to cast this spell, but he mentioned Baldur's Gate as a reference point, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like, it's nice to hear about what he's up to.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate it's a full action to teleport the cube up to 30 feet, but it's just the utility of it, and the fact that you're concentrating on it is now useful and makes sense, versus you're concentrating on a thing that is only going to stay in this one place, and then people just walk away.
Yeah, and then other than that, you kind of have to get creative. I think it works if you're in a small space and maybe you have a friend, or you yourself can just keep casting Thunder Wave and reliably push them back into Cloud of Daggers. But other than that, it gets really difficult to use.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, totally.
But I really like that you can move it now. It's because you can do the same thing with what is it, Moonbeam? Yeah.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I mean, a number of the things that are like you concentrate on this area and something happens in this
Yeah, but
area.
you can move it, and so I like
Yeah.
that you can do that with this now.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's really great. Big fan.
Yeah, and I think another change to the spellcasting is like, so did you see that there's a new area of effect? They're using emanation now to describe effects that
Yeah.
originate from you.
So, and that's so. I was gonna. I have noticed that, and in this moment, I was like, wait, where can I find the description of that? It seems like this was in a like trying to clarify various things, like Thunderwave, where you're like, a cube that you are on a face of, and whatever, and cones that emanate out from you for cone of cold sort of things, to really try to clarify that. And a paladin aura is now an emanation, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I'm gonna look. That's actually, maybe that will give me the right link to go and find the definition.
There is
for
now
this.
a glossary of terms in the back of the player's handbook, which I really that has been so useful. That has been really genius. Just in general, again, like the restructuring of information, I really like this. So
Yeah.
but if you go in the back, there's a glossary, and it will have emanation. It will say
okay,
area of
okay.
effect, so you can find it.
It is an area effect that extends in straight lines from a creature or an object in all directions. The effect from Oh, it's yes. Clarity. I love clarity.
Yes.
Okay. That's
Yes,
really
it's
cool.
added that. So I'm happy about it.
Yeah, same. I think that makes a big difference for so many of these like specific questions about any effect, any spell or magical effect that radiates or emanates from you.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Cool. Well, I feel pretty excited to play a 2024 wizard on balance of things. Honestly,
I think so.
this
Like, I
makes
think there's
me
a lot
pretty
to play
happy.
with. Yeah, there's a lot to play with, and you are just more powerful. So I
Yeah.
think that they like, because they did, like again with color spray and sleep, that like they've made those super exciting to use. And I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess my wizard also can do the sad trombone for legend lore, but I'm more excited about that for a bard.
Oh yeah. I love the spells where something like that is very clearly specified, that like, no, it's not a sad gong. It's not just,
No, it's
oh
a
no, you didn't
sad
do
trombone.
it. It is literally a sad trombone plays. That makes me so happy. Are there, I feel like I don't want to wrap up without like asking if there are other either specific combinations or things that you are already kind of planning around some of the ways these rules have changed, combinations of spells or abilities that occurred to you that you were excited about.
I am really hoping that because some of my favorite wizard spells are not in the player's handbook. I love Crown of Stars. I love
Oh my God, you're right.
I love Sickening Radiance, and I would like for them to add those.
Yeah.
Because I mean, my favorite thing to do is to did we talk about this last time? I don't remember. Is to do the microwave situation.
We talked about it, Force Cage with Sickening Radiance.
Yeah, it's a Wall of Force. And so depending,
yeah.
like I would like to still be able to do that kind of thing. It depends. I also would like to see how the rest of the spells are getting updated, because I'm sure they will.
I would hope so. I mean, I make the assumption they're going to like leave behind some things that they, for whatever reason, don't want, or Feeble Mind will become befuddlement.
Yeah. Although I do like
that
Toll the Dead has now become a core spell. You can now get it in the player's handbook, and it just kind of became
good.
it just became so ubiquitous that a lot of people didn't realize that it wasn't a core spell.
Yeah. No, it became everywhere. I also like, I'm gonna mention these other two, I think two new ones that I'm seeing that are both 5th level spells. We have, I have mixed feelings about when they add a spell that has someone's name attached to it, because it makes me feel like, should I understand who this person is, or like, and what am I missing here? Who was Rary of Rary's telepathic bond?
It makes me interested. It makes me inclined to look it up.
Yeah. So we have Jalarzi's Storm of Radiance, a 10-foot radius, 40-foot high cylinder centered on a point within 120 feet. While in this area, creatures have blinded and deafened conditions and cannot cast spells with a verbal component, which, as I'm reading it, no save required.
Yes, I like that. So I think that is really cool, but I think it requires some setup because like the repeat trigger is at the end of the creature's turns, and so there isn't like the spell doesn't come with a way to keep the enemies to remain inside the area. And so I think that if I have a friend who can maybe do like hold monster or something and keep them there, then that could be a really nice way to just kind of deal passive damage. And you could end an encounter pretty quickly with that, because otherwise they will just leave the area.
Yeah. Well, you know, put your fighter with sentinel feet there and like stop them from leaving.
I mean, just get a big friend to grapple them or something. Well, but
and I like, okay, so when it appears, every creature is blind and deafened immediately, and they also will make a con save to take radiant and thunder damage, or half on a successful save. I'm going to ask this as a question. Have you ruled things? So this to me is the language of things like Spirit Guardians, which says when the Guardians appear, meow, 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 and then the creature also will make a save when it enters the spell's area for the first time on a turn or ends its turn there. And this, I like there's this addition, a creature makes the save only once per turn, because otherwise you do it a million times. But so I'd kind of rule that as like, when the thing appears, your targets have to make a save and take damage. And then at the beginning of their turn also, because they're starting their turn in the spell's area, they have to make the save again. I think my question is maybe how would you rule this, or does that seem ridiculous? I guess I don't know.
Sorry, can you read out the text again?
Yeah. Okay. So when the storm appears, each creature makes a Constitution save, 2d10 radiant and thunder on a fail, or half as much on success. A creature also makes this save when it enters the spell's area for the first time on a turn, or ends its turn there. But a creature will make the save only once per turn.
Yes, I would in that case, because it says when you cast the spell that it has to make a save. So then, I would allow that.
So you might get. Sorry,
whereas previously, I mean, with things like Spirit Guardians, it says when they it feels like they should take damage immediately upon you casting it. But I think the majority of the time it's bit like the DM has had to kind of remember that the creatures are standing in this aura and they have to take damage at the start of their turns, and it's been it's a bit finicky.
Yeah, it's a thing. But I do like that this. I feel like the way this is specified, you pop this off in combat, you immediately blind and deafen creatures in there, and hopefully their turn is not immediately following yours, but you're going to immediately do damage, and then as soon as those creatures take their turn, they're going to take more damage.
I like that it says on a turn as opposed to on your turn, though, which is really nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that is good specificity. I like this spell. I think this is fun. It's a storm of flashing light and raging thunder, and it does what it says. I'm into that. That's
yeah,
fun.
I think so. I think so too.
So the other one is also 5th level is Yolande's Regal Presence.
Another thing I like about the Dungeon Master's Guide is that there are pronunciations for the iconic characters that there are.
I should have consulted that clearly in this moment. So for this Regal Presence, it's I was going to say it's like Unbreakable Majesty from Glamour Bards, but it's not. Okay, you surround yourself with unearthly majesty in a 10-foot emanation. So 10 feet out from yourself. Whenever the emanation enters the space of a creature you can see, and whenever a creature you can see enters the emanation or ends its turn there. So whenever you move and a creature comes into your 10-foot radius, or whenever a creature walks in there, you can force that creature to make a wisdom save. On a failed save, the target takes 4d6 psychic and has the prone condition, and you can push it 10 feet away.
Yeah, I really like this one because I would use it. I would hope to get them in a bottleneck or down a corridor or something, and just keep walking forward and pushing them back. It would be really funny, actually.
I love. I mean, I love again the image of this is like you as this. I like to imagine a very, I don't know if Discworld is a familiar reference, but a very Rincewind wizard, like very scruffy and scraggly and like a, bent over hat that says wizard with 2 Z's and, walking, like creeping down this hallway, but somehow pushing everyone in front of them. And the prone condition, like to flavor that is like, oh, you are so majestic and regal. People are like bowing to the floor
I
in
love
front
the
of you.
flavor on this one. Also, the regal presence. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be funny to play a scruffy character, but also all my characters are fancy. So, yeah, mostly so that then I can. I mean, my strategy has just been to make them have fancy taste, so then I can dress them in outfits that I already own and then make it easy for me to cosplay them. That's my strategy.
I love that. Well, it's a brilliant strategy. I'm sure they are all impeccably dressed. Absolutely impeccably. Wow. These are
so I really like the
good.
spell editions. There's been some really cool ones.
Yeah.
So as we can see.
Totally. I'm continuing down the list, and now I'm like, well, clearly this is going to be the next.
I like that
hour
there
or
is
two of my
a
afternoon.
sorceress burst as well. It's nice that because sorcerers had so few unique spells that were like unique to them. I like that this one actually is for sorcerers.
I do like that a whole lot. Oh, I just saw something. Oh, okay. Wait, quick, while we're on new ones. Tasha's Bubbling Cauldron. Oh, this is fun. Okay. This is a 6th level spell. You conjure a claw-footed cauldron filled with bubbling liquid. It appears within 5 feet of you, lasts for the duration, which is 10 minutes. Can't be moved and disappears at the end. The liquid in the cauldron duplicates the properties of a common or uncommon potion of your choice. As a bonus action, you or an ally can reach into the cauldron and withdraw 1 potion. It can produce a number of these potions equal to your spellcasting modifier, a minimum of 1. When the last of the potions is withdrawn, the cauldron disappears. And what is the part that I can't quite see? Potions obtained from the cauldron that aren't consumed disappear when you cast it again.
Yeah, that is useful.
It is one of the things that needs a material component that DMs might want you to have. It says a gilded ladle worth 500 plus gold. So if you are playing in that version of a game, you will need to find a 500 gold piece gilded ladle. But why would you want to have a claw-footed cauldron full of bubbling liquid and have anything but a gilded ladle to dip into it?
Yeah, no, I like that. I also just think it's useful if you're, in the middle of nowhere and it's difficult to find healing potions.
This also... I'm curious if I'll find this looking into kind of sorcerers, some other stuff. It seems like there is some attempt to create spells for wizards. So if your party doesn't have a cleric or a druid, you'll still have healing and you won't be totally screwed depending on how nice your DM might be.
Yes.
But between this and the arcane vigor, you've now got wizards now have ways to heal themselves and the party potentially. And the fact that would produce potions, it heals the party over time.
Yeah. I also like this because, in the absence of the alchemist, you can still flavor your character as I'm going to brew a potion.
Yes.
I can see that happening.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, so much fun. Okay. If those all look, those, and then the high 7th, 8th, 9th level spells, I think, have not changed.
Power Word Kill now does damage if you're... Yeah, it does now. If you if you target a creature that has more than 100 hit points.
Okay.
So, which I like that a lot because, again, it depends on how much you know, how much you're willing to risk, because you want that to be an insta-kill. But if in the event that you somehow... you don't get the number of hit points correct, then it wouldn't do anything, but now you can actually deal them some damage. It feels good to actually use a 9th level spell and not waste it, because I imagine that just must feel bad to have nothing happen.
Having had a true polymorph to turn into an ancient dragon counterspelled, it fucking sucks.
Yeah,
I was so mad. That made me think of this. I'm glad I checked. So Power Word Stun has achieved the same thing. In that now with Power Word Stun, if your target has more than 150 hit points, its speed is reduced to 0 until the start of your next turn. Yeah. So once again, you get something if you have misjudged the amount of hit points on your target. It doesn't just completely waste the slot. Oh, that's great. Cool. I am so into wizards. I was already into wizards,
I'm excited.
And I'm so more into wizards.
There's a lot to like here, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Man, yeah, this is great. I am so glad to dive into this. Other things we have found in parting thoughts ish. I don't know, where are we at? Yeah, parting ish thoughts, or did we miss anything?
I don't think so. I think I covered everything that I came wanting to discuss. So, but yeah, thank you for the opportunity. It's always really nice to get to do a deep dive, as it were, into the things that are happening.
I am enjoying it so much. Honestly, I'm doing it as a slight cheat for my own prep, because starting in 2025, the games that I'm running for kids, we are the whole company is making the switch over to the new rules.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. So you're going to have to become proficient with the 2024.
I am trying. Yeah, I'm slowly working on it, and I'm trying to see if I can get my family to spring for a new physical copy.
If you run games for kids, to plug my workplace, we did recently release an update for Humblewood for the player-facing options converted for 2024. So just putting that out there. It's a very appropriate setting to get kids into D&D.
Yes, it is. There will be links to that in show notes. I will make sure that I get those links because I am excited about it.
Yeah, so if you've already purchased Humblewood, then you are eligible to get the 2024 option.
Ooh, okay. Well, I'll have to dig that down, because I think I got one of the slightly misprint books when it was on sale earlier. But I love it. I just to toot your horn for a minute, like, amazing work. The setting is so fully realized, and it makes me so excited that it is continuing to expand.
Yep, Humblewood 2 is on the horizon. I'm very excited for that.
Yay.
Humblewood 2 Beyond the Canopy, I should say, because at PAX Unplugged this previous weekend, we unveiled the title, which is good.
I like that. That's a very evocative title. Well marketed, well selected. I don't know, something in there. Well, I guess on that note, check out Humblewood 2 Beyond the Canopy. Camel? I don't know where I got. I speak English. In fact, have a degree in debatably speaking English. Go check out Humblewood updated for 2024. Check out Humblewood 2 Beyond the Canopy. Sebastian, anything else exciting and coming up that we'll throw some links in for?
There's a few things, but honestly, just follow me on Blue Sky, and that's where you'll get all of my latest news, and also my newsletter as well. I am going back to posting there. Also, I have a post up right now that is just all of the thoughts that I had about wizards from the Subclasses Revivified project that I was part of, which is still out. And actually, I think I can see a lot of longevity to that one, even if Wizards does update the rest of the subclasses. Yeah. A lot of ours are reworked, reimagined, and in some cases completely different from the original. So definitely check it out if you want other character options.
Yeah, we'll throw a link to that as well. And join everybody on Blue Sky. It's the new cool place to be.
Yeah, so I'm Sebastian Yue, SEBASTIANYUE .bsky.social.
I do wonder if they're going to shorten usernames at a certain point, but we'll see.
I don't mind. They have the extra character. They have the extra kind of 20 characters to account for that, so I think it's okay.
That's true. We follow the Roll Report Cast. We are, as always, at the Roll Report Cast.bsky.social and at the Roll Report Cast on your other platforms. Sebastian, thank you so much for joining us again. What an absolute treat to any time we get to talk, and such fun to go into Wizards with you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was good.
Yeah. Follow all the links, find all the things, and join us in, a couple weeks for the next, I don't remember what class we're doing next, but we'll have another class coming up.